So, Brecht, thank you so much for making time to share your insights into the future of leadership.
Sure. Thank you so much, Dr. Nick, and thank you for the opportunity to provide some insights from my side.
It's great to have you on the show, Brecht. And before we walk into the future, can you please tell us a little bit about your background?
So I was actually born in Durban, where my parents are from, but we moved up here when I was 9 months old. So I've been raised, and I consider myself I grew up on the West Rand for primary school, but then moved a bit closer to our DP World Wonder Stadium for high school at St. David's Marist Brothers. And then after school, I decided to pursue a chartered accountancy profession. And I felt that that would just open a number of doors. And I studied at the University of Witwatersrand, did my articles through Ernst & Young. Back in those days, it was still Ernst & Young, nowadays EY. And then obtained various corporate roles through Marion Roberts, followed by Alexander Forbes, and then found myself here at Lions Cricket at our iconic DP World Wonder Stadium.
And tell us, Brecht, what was your dream career when you grew up?
So when I was growing up, my dream career was to be a professional sportsman. But when I wasn't being called up to the national age groups at 12 or 13 years old, I think I realized that sport was more just a passion, but wouldn't be a profession. So early on, I dreamt of being a professional sportsman. But as I went through my high schooling career, I did apply my mind, and then my focus shifted into how able to impact the country that I love so much, that is so dear to my heart, our beloved South Africa. And that was then my dream, as to see where can I be, where I can make an impact into our country and change the lives of our beautiful people and use my skills and expertise to make a difference.
And tell us, Brecht, who inspired you in your early days?
So my biggest early inspiration came from Tata Madiba, Nelson Mandela himself. I recall I was only 5 years old at the time, but I still recall my parents saying they were going to go voting. It was their first time that they were allowed to vote. And I also remember the year after 1995 with South Africa hosting the Rugby World Trophy. And even then, I was 6 years old, but I still have a vivid memory of Nelson Mandela lifting the trophy with the captain at that stage, Francois Pienaar. And from that moment, then I started trying to understand more, who is this gentleman that everyone seems to rave about. And once I sort of started understanding more how he dedicated his life for the country, how he sacrificed the number of years in prison to come out and reconcile the nation, he was my first mentor who inspired me about changing this country and about all of us making a difference.
Thank you. And Brecht, you are leading a very impressive career. You're also one of the SAICA top 35 under 35. Looking back over your career, would you say there was a turning point or maybe a number of turning points?
So there were quite a number of turning points, and I'll share a very personal story, which is very instrumental in my career, which actually got me to change my whole life and perspective, and that was the biggest turning point. So I'll be open and honest and say that I'm a recovering alcoholic and recovering addict, also suffering from depression, anxiety, and mental disorders. And it was in 2018 where I started initially denying all my ailments, but the chickens came home to roost when I realized that I needed to seek help, seek guidance, and change my way of living. And admitting myself into rehab in December 2018 was my turning point in my career, because I decided to then take my life back, that I wasn't going to be controlled by substances, by alcohol, and a number of other things, and I was going to focus on turning my life around. And that was my turning point, which allowed me to understand that everyone goes through challenges in life, and it's about how you bounce back, and using my experiences to show that we are strong as South Africans, that we can turn things around no matter how deep and dark things get. That was my single most important turning point in my career, my decision to take my life back and enter a life of sobriety.
Well, thank you for sharing. That is very important, and I think very instructive for many future leaders who might be
Yes.
facing similar challenges.
Yes, 100%, because life, we don't know what tomorrow holds. Only a higher power greater than ourselves knows what tomorrow holds and what the journey and the path is going to lead us to. And sometimes it's only upon reflection we join the dots. And sometimes in the moment, looking back, we say, why us? Why me? Why is this happening? But only once we reflect and join the dots, we understand this is part of a bigger picture. And I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't go through those challenges and I allowed myself to embrace my flaws, but also understand my strengths. And I think, again, Nelson Mandela re-emphasized a quote that it's not our darkness, but it's our light that most intimidates us. And sometimes it's our potential that we are most feared about. And now it's about unlocking all our potential.
Thank you. So, Brett, what would you say is driving you today?
So the biggest thing driving me today is my purpose and my vision for my country, South Africa, and using my role to impact lives and communities, and using the vehicle of sport, which I'm in, to change lives. And again, Nelson Mandela taught us that sports can unite a nation and bring hope where there was despair. Biggest mission in life now. And what is driving me is about impacting people, impacting communities, and making a difference to unlock our potential in this country.
Now, Brett, looking into the future, and I know it's a big question, but what does the future of leadership mean to you?
So the future of leadership has evolved. And if we look at leadership through the different generations, from our Gen Zs to the baby boomers to the millennials, to current Gen Y, I think there's shifts in leaderships. And now the future of leadership is understanding the generational thinking, but specifically relevant to our country. Leadership has to embrace diversity, inclusiveness, and being able to speak to people from all walks of life, and being able to lead people by example. And there's an old saying that says that your mouth speaks what's in your mind, but your action speaks what's in your heart. And by leading through our heart and our actions and making tangible differences through leadership is so key in our current age. And the future of leadership will involve diversity, inclusivity, and understanding people from all walks of life, and embracing the fourth industrial revolution as well, embracing digital and technology in our leadership.
Thank you. Now, Brett, what have you learned from your own journey that you consider most important for building future leaders?
So the most important, I would feel, is there's a lot of emphasis on the quantitative qualifications, so building quantitative skill sets. However, now I think one of the biggest aspects is about the qualitative skill sets in terms of being a leader. So it's not necessarily about your IQ, how many qualifications you've got behind your name, but now I think it's more necessarily about your EQ. And especially with the introduction of social media streams, EQ is so important nowadays. And I think that's one of the things that I feel is very important in terms of future leaders. Is yes, you need to have the technical qualifications and an IQ skill set, but you equally need to have the EQ skill set to be able to interact and engage with people, especially in our interconnected world. And that has been driven by digital social media, that everything is interconnected. And now it's about understanding EQ and using various sources of technology around us to drive leaders in our organizations and in our country.
Now, Brett, you touched on challenges that future leaders are facing, and we live in a world that is stumbling from one crisis into the next. So what is your advice for future leaders in terms of challenges?
Sure. I think one very relevant example which impacted not just South Africa, but the whole world, was our COVID-19 pandemic. And I think that taught us that we're living in a VUCA world, VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And if we think we know what the future holds, Mother Nature and higher power will teach us otherwise. So now it's about being adaptable. So there will be challenges where you'll have to think on your feet, where you'll have to be flexible, agile, adaptable. And I think one of the biggest challenges that future leaders are going to face is how we incorporate digital technologies, but also how we incorporate more inclusivity in speaking to people from all walks of life and to embrace operational efficiencies, but to be able to be agile in our ways of work so that we can have contingency plans for anything that may happen in the future.
Now, Brett, if you were to design a curriculum for future leaders, what are some of the new skills you would want to factor in?
So top of mind, a skill would be digital technology and embracing the fourth industrial revolution. And I think the shift of the mindset that are going to replace jobs, technologies are going to assist jobs to allow people to free up more time to do other worthwhile items, and the robot or the technology will be able to do the mundane day-to-day tasks. So that would be one of the top of the minds of any curriculum, but also understanding how interconnected our world is. And we know that an election happening in the United States, a conflict potentially in the Middle East or Asia, does have an impact on us everyday South Africans and how we live. So it's about understanding global impacts from a macroeconomic point of view and how that applies into our microeconomics as well.
Now, Brett, as a mentor to many future leaders, can you maybe share a success story or two where you mentored an upcoming leader and that person took your advice to heart?
Sure. So I've got a great example. We had at our DP World Lions a intern that was in my finance team, fresh, shiny out of university. And he was struggling to adapt to a working environment. And once I started unpacking and having open and honest conversation, issues from a home environment, there were issues that were challenging at a work environment, and all of this culminated into a gentleman who felt insecure and felt they didn't have a place and was lost in terms of where they saw their future. I spent a lot of time guiding in terms of this is how you can have different coping mechanisms for your challenges at home. This is how you can have different coping mechanisms for your challenges at work. And to be able to understand that you're going to have good days, you're going to have bad days. But if you see a challenge, change your mindset that it's not a challenge, it's a growth opportunity. And this individual took that advice on board. He actually implemented the changes in his home environment. He implemented the changes in his working environment. And lo and behold, he is a corporate and went from an intern in my finance team and is now heading up a digital space at a very large corporate. And I think that is just one small success story that I can share about how I've used my experiences to help someone else grow their ability and make an impact in their life.
Thank you. And Brett, looking back over your leadership career, are there any role models of leadership that you encountered and maybe worked with that you recommend future leaders should learn from?
Sure. So even though Nelson Mandela started leading our nation in 1994, I think his leadership style is still very relevant today. And I can just share an example of Nelson Mandela, where before 1994, he had a mindset of potentially using conflicts and armed forces to address our problems, but then shifted that mindset into reconciliation. And I think only once we can be empathetic to our counterparts, understand their situation, build that into the situation we're coming from, can we have proper reconciliation amongst our leaderships. So Nelson Mandela, I think, is still a relevant role model and leader today. I am a big football fan, and one of my biggest idols, probably still my biggest idol, was Steven Gerrard. And his leadership style was not to shout or be the first person to stand up on stage, but leading by example. And again, showing your actions speaking louder than your words. So someone leading by example and leading with their heart on their sleeve, but still bringing everyone around them to move in the same direction. And even more relevant and closer to home is my current CEO, John O'Leafright, who has an amazing leadership style, who whether you're the security guard, a tea lady, or whether he's speaking to a fellow CEO from another, everyone the same as human beings and looks at the human before the title. And that's one of the things that sinks very well with me, is that we are all human beings at the end of the day, and ranks and titles are only given to us, but we all start off as human beings, and treating everyone as human is one of the best mentorship lessons I've learned.
Now, Brett, how can our listeners connect with you, and where should they follow you?
So our listeners can connect with me via my LinkedIn page, where I do have content, and I've shared certain stories of my journey through my LinkedIn page. They are also welcome to contact me through my email at Lions Cricket, or contact me privately via WhatsApp. I'm always willing to give back and to share my stories and give any advice. One of the biggest things that we learned in rehab is that you can only keep what you have if you're willing to share it with others and help others grow. So I'm happy for anyone to connect with me either via LinkedIn, via my email address, or via WhatsApp personally.
Thank you. And last but not least, Brett, what is your message to the millions of learners out there who are looking to finish school, to start a career? What are maybe one or two success principles they should keep in mind?
So tenacity and resilience is a key message, because life can get tough, especially in our country. There's lots of challenges, load shedding, crime, potentially sometimes water shortages, but to stay resilient, and that it's always darkest before the dawn, and the darkest point in any tunnel is at the midpoint. And once you pass that darkest midpoint, you start seeing the lights. And that's also with life. You will have down days, you will have dark days, but it's about learning from those experiences. And just like the winter and the summer months, we don't appreciate the summer months or the spring months without experiencing the cold of the winter months. So sometimes you need those growth learning experiences so that you know what it feels like to be in those challenging situations, but to stay resilient, stay tenacious, because there is hope, and it's only yourself that can drive you to grow and learn from those experiences.
Well, Brett, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your journey, your own leadership journey, and inspiring us to really work together and build a better future.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Dr. Nick. Really appreciate it.